What's going on, Goosers? Welcome back to part three of the Silly Goose History Chinggis Khan series. We left off where Chinggis had achieved unification of the Mongolian tribes. Huge moment for Mongolia, huge moment for history. Mongolia and Chinggis Khan are now ready to take on dynasties in China. We're going to start in the northwest region of China. We're going to talk about a couple of conquests there this episode. I'm gonna say some Chinese names, the names of the dynasties. I'm gonna try my best to pronounce them properly. They're not super complicated, so it should be okay. But I don't want to hear anything about mispronunciations because, frankly, there's nothing I can do about it. So, without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Chinggis's first attempt at expanding the Mongolian border started with the Jia dynasty. Now, they shared a border, so this made sense. Geographically, it made sense to just start with your neighbor. So now you may be thinking, how could the Mongolians possibly be prepared to take on an established Chinese dynasty? Well, that's a great question. And honestly, you should already know the answer because I've given you enough information. But the Mongolians, as you know, were hunter-gatherers. They had to scrape, fight, claw to survive. So these guys are already expert hunters. They are on a horse since the day they're born, basically. They've got a bow in their hand out the womb. These guys know how to fight, and now they're unified. So they're not fighting against each other. There's nothing holding them back. And it doesn't hurt that Chinggis, as you're going to see, is wildly creative. Super creative. It's crazy. Some of the stuff he thinks about. I would never have thought about it. And I can only imagine people must have thought he was a little crazy. He probably was. Anyway, besides the point. So the Mongolians are already, they're ready to fight. They're good fighters. They're not just this new army they don't know how to hold a crossbow. They don't know how to fire a bow. They don't know how to put an arrow into something. They know what they're doing. So the first real battle occurs on the border of the Jia dynasty in Mongolia. Chinggis is about 47 at this point. And so the Jia bring an army of about 150,000. This is going to be a common theme as well. The Mongolians were outnumbered pretty severely. They brought about 75,000 troops with them. But Chinggis is not there to fight fairly. He never will be for the remainder of his life. He will never fight fair. And so they get a reputation of being savages because they're not following the traditional rules of battle. But anyway, the Jia show up in their phalanx. If you know what that is, I'm sure from the high school history books. They're organized. They're in their groups, and the Mongolians are basically just pestering them and tiring them out and trying to get them all out of whack. So they're firing arrows into the phalanx. They're not in this organized unit like the Jia are. So they win that battle. They win that battle at the border, and now they're going to expand onto the Jia capital. So as they're making their way through Jia territory, they eventually make it to the capital. Now the Jia capital is pronounced Zhongjing. I'm pretty sure. I did Google it to confirm. Zhongjing. That is the capital of the Jia Empire. Now, Chinggis has got to get creative again. This is a walled city, and they have zero experience with walled cities at this point. Like I said, their fights were intertribal, and they were fighting camps against camps, tents, no walls. So Chinggis really has to get creative. So what does Chinggis do? He says, hold on, there's a river nearby. Why don't we flood the river? Why don't we try and flood the city? We divert the river water, the Yellow River. So Chinggis is on his toes, trying to be creative here. Well, this backfired a little bit. And this is really the only time in my research that things went poorly for him, as the Secret History of the Mongols tells. The flood, he was successful in diverting the river water, but it did flood the Mongolian camp, and they had to retreat back to higher grounds. Sort of worked in the sense that it made it quite annoying for the Xia dynasty. Now they had a ton of standing water just around their city, which I'm sure was just gross and a pain in the ass. But it didn't really stop the Mongolians and Genghis. It was just a brief setback. They were constantly wearing down the walls of Zhongzheng, and they were outside there being pests, taking out any food convoys trying to get into the city, and eventually the Xia emperor was just like, you know what, they're never gonna go away. I'm just gonna meet their demands, and their demands were pretty steep. So they demanded gold, silk, jewelry. They expected the Xia Empire to be a vassal state, meaning that whenever Genghis and the Mongolian tribes needed something, the Xia were expected to provide it. So that also including men for fighting, money, all of that, food if they needed it. And this is really where Mongolians started to get like super wealthy. And Genghis was not one to just hoard it all to himself. Another good guy Genghis moment, Genghis gave, if he had an excess of something, he gave it to his people. Like the common folk were dressing in silk. They were using silver pots and pans to cook with. I mean, these people had started to accrue such a wealth as a whole, not just the elite, but everybody. They were like, at one point they were stashing it away in like sheds. They had so much of this stuff, like of silk and jewelry and silver and gold. They didn't know what to do with it, and it all started with the conquering of the Xia Empire, and turned them into a vassal state. That's another common theme. They will continue to do that with empires as they take them down. So yeah, this is really the start of the Mongolian Empire. They really are forming themselves into an empire at this point after taking down a pretty substantial opponent in the Xia. Now, I didn't want to include this story as a part of the Xia Empire takedown. It's unverifiable, and honestly, it seems a little far-fetched even for Genghis, who is a very creative man. But if it's true, it's hilarious. So there's a story told that Genghis and the Mongolian army were just staking out Zhongzheng outside the walls. And they were just like, they're like, okay, you know what? We'll leave you guys alone. All we need from you, Zhongzheng, the people of Zhongzheng, is 1,000 cats and 10,000 small birds. And so the people were like, I mean, all right, that's weird, but sure, if that'll get you off our back, we'll agree to those terms. That's no problem. So they give them the 1,000 cats and the 10,000 small birds. And Genghis is like, these morons just signed their own death warrant. He ties little balls of wool to the birds and to the cats with some string, lights them on fire, and sends them back into the city. And so now these birds and cats are probably just freaking out with their tails on fire, making a whole mess of the city, lighting everything on fire. And then, as the story goes, Genghis was basically able to just walk in there during all the chaos and take over the city and get them to surrender. It seems crazy. It seems unlikely. I hope it's true. Honestly, after all my research, I've become a big fan of Genghis Khan, and this is just something that I would not be surprised if he did. But you know how the history books like to elaborate on things, so I don't know if the specifics are true, but it is funny. It's funny. Super creative way of sacking a city. Big fan. But after about a decade, so I'll fast forward a little bit here, just so we can wrap up the Xia dynasty. After about a decade, the Xia attempted to break free from their Mongolian captors. the emperor was getting sick of providing men and all their wealth and all their food to the Mongolians. He said, you know what, I've had enough. I'm done here. And so this will be the first instance where I'm going to talk about Genghis not taking too kindly to people not following his rules. Genghis did not like this, and when you disobey Genghis, it's not going to go well for you. He just wiped out the whole empire. He took down the whole city of Zhanjing. He wiped him clean, and it's not the only time he's going to do that. But so you try to disobey Genghis, that's going to happen. I won't go into specifics on this one. There's another one coming up where I will go a little bit more into the details on, because he could. I pointed out his good points, right? I've shown where he's good, but he can also be pretty nasty little guy. But yeah, that's it for the Jia Dynasty. We're gonna move on to the Jin Dynasty next. All right, so now Genghis has officially taken down the Jia, made them a vassal state. He's iced himself out. He has iced his boys out. He has iced all the Mongolians out. Now they're ready to take on the Jin Dynasty. I'll throw up a map so you can track the movement of the Mongolians and Genghis. But now, they've proven they can do it. They're ready to go after the Jin. This one was probably a little personal for Genghis. The people who ruled the Jin Dynasty, they were called the Jurchens, and they historically had not treated Mongolians well. And if we know anything about Genghis, it's that he holds a grudge, and he's going to make you pay for what you did. So the Jin emperor sent over a guy basically saying, "Hey, Genghis, we heard about you over there at the Jia Dynasty. Just want to let you know, if you try that shit with us, we're gonna declare war." And Genghis said, as the secret history of the Mongols tells, Genghis spat on the ground and said, "We're just going to come to you. We're going to meet you at your spot, and we're going to take you down." So Genghis gears start turning. How can I take down this Jin Dynasty, which is geographically much larger than the Jia? But now he's got experience. Now Genghis is going to have to get even more creative, because the Jin Empire controls much of the Great Wall of China at this point. They actually had a large part in building it. So Genghis is really going to have to learn how to take care of these walls. So what he does is he sends one of his top generals, Sube'etei, and about 30,000 troops to attack a part of the Great Wall. The Jin Empire focuses their forces on them. Genghis loses about 5,000 troops. Sube'etei and his guys retreat, but at the same time, about 200 miles to the west, Genghis and about 90,000 Mongolian troops were crossing the Great Wall at another end. This end of the Great Wall was supposed to be guarded by a tribe similar to the Mongolians, but this other tribe saw the Mongolians coming, and they basically just sidestepped out of the way and let Genghis walk right through, which is hilarious, because that's exactly what I would do. Smart move by those guys. So Genghis now had the Jin army scrambling, because they think that Sube'etei and his army is all of the attack that's going to happen. Meanwhile, Genghis has a much larger army, hundreds of miles away. So Jin have to kind of regroup and send it back over to Genghis before he makes too much progress. Again, Mongolians were outnumbered, though, once the Jin organized. The Jin had about 200,000 troops incoming. Genghis and his guys were holding off for a little bit. And then Sube'etei shows up with his remaining 25,000 and kind of tips the scales. It turns into an absolute bloodbath. I have a direct quote from the secret history of the Mongols here, describing the dead bodies being stacked like rotten logs. I mean, this is just like nasty stuff. I can't even imagine being back in those days, having a fight in there, I don't know. Seems insane. Anyway, Genghis wins that battle, and then in Genghis fashion, spends the next six months burning, pillaging, raping, and killing his way across 90 Jin cities. Genghis, like I said, holds a grudge, was not playing around. I don't necessarily agree with the raping part and probably the killing. Pillaging, I get. Burning, for those times, pretty common. But again, not on board with the raping. Just to make things clear. So the Jin Emperor was having enough of this. He said, "All right, Genghis, truce is a truce. We'll call off our guys. You call off your guys." And Genghis said, "No thanks. I'm gonna go ahead and take over Beijing now." Beijing was originally the capital of the Jin Dynasty. The Jin Emperor actually ended up moving the capital further south, which led to this this attack by Genghis. Genghis did not like that. He viewed it as a betrayal of trust. I don't understand why. I'm sure there was some politics involved, but Genghis wasn't a huge fan. So he's like, "All right, I'm coming after Beijing now." Now Beijing was heavily fortified, a heavily fortified walled city. I imagine back in those days, it was very advanced. Over 900 towers surrounding the city, 1 million residents, and the Jin knew how to protect themselves as well. They had learned to use fire bombs and catapults. Put those fire bombs in the catapults. Again, more like Game of Thrones type stuff. Think about that. And then this is a very fun fact. I love hitting you guys with fun facts. The Jin were the first known group to use poison gas. They figured out how to use a mixture of human feces, poisonous plants, and poisonous beetles, and they would mash them all together and light them on fire, and it made a poisonous gas, and it worked to kill people. They were actually doing a pretty good job against the Mongolians, dropping all the fire and the poison gas against them. But then Genghis is, again, just smarter than everybody. He had taken many of the Jin civilians as prisoner along his way during his raping, pillaging, burning of the Jin cities. So he started using the Jin citizens as human shields. And so the troops in Beijing, the Jin troops, are seeing these people, and they probably recognize a few of them, saying, "Hey, that's my cousin. Maybe we don't dump the poison gas and fire on him." So eventually, Genghis would wear them out in that sense as well. He just would not relent, and the Jin gave in into Beijing. So Genghis sacks another city. The fighting against the Jin dynasty would go on for another 23 years. Even after Chinggis' death, it would continue to go on. But really the important part is that Genghis is showing his strength here. He's taken down Beijing. He's controlling a large part of the Jin dynasty. Again, geographically, the Jin dynasty is huge, so it's going to take the 23 years. It makes sense. It's a lot of land to cover. But I'm focusing on when Genghis is alive, what he's physically doing. He's still accomplishing a lot within the Jin dynasty. So those are two huge major conquests Genghis was able to accomplish pretty early on in his conquesting career. This, again, he acquired an insane amount of wealth during this time. He's gathering knowledge. It's all going to be super useful for when he takes on the rest of Asia and moves into Eastern Europe. Genghis is smart as he takes these places over, as he takes over cities and towns. He's not dumb. He is raping, pillaging, and killing. Again, we don't agree with some of that stuff. Me and you, I know. But he's also recognizing who not to kill and who not to rape. So if he goes into a city and there are doctors and engineers, he keeps them. He sends them back to Mongolia so they can be productive citizens. He shows mercy in the sense that if you're willing to bow your head to the Mongolian Empire and you're willing to really be a part of it, you're good. Just don't go against him is the main part. So this is where we're going to leave off. Next episode, we're going to talk about a few more conquests of his as he continues on his path. But I think this is another great place to leave off. Hope you guys stay tuned for the next part. We're almost wrapped up here. I'll see you later.